Hi, Vicki. How are
Hi,
you
Carlene.
doing? Yeah, nice to see you.
Nice to virtually see you too.
Welcome, everyone. This is our first Amache virtual pilgrimage. We have 3 full days of live and recorded activities for you to see, and I hope that you will enjoy every one of those 3 days. So take a seat, enjoy.
Thanks, Carlene. From 1975 to 2019, a crowd of excited folks gathered in downtown Denver on the 3rd Saturday of May to board a bus headed for the Amache Japanese American incarceration site in Grenada, Colorado. There they would first attend a Buddhist and Christian ceremony at the cemetery to remember their ancestors and to honor those who served in the military. They would tour the site, visit the Amache Museum, and enjoy a luncheon at Grenada High. These traditions were held in person until the COVID-19 pandemic canceled all in-person activities in 2020.
Yeah, this year, instead of canceling the important tradition again, a group of really talented, interested folks got together and created a virtual program for you to safely enjoy. In the past, pilgrimages have only lasted 1 day, but this year you get a treat. This year's virtual pilgrimage will provide 3 days of activities instead of only 1 as in the past. My name is Carlene Tanagoshi Tinker. I'm a 3rd generation Japanese American Assange. I'm now 81 years old, soon to be 82. I was only 3 when my family and my parents and I were evacuated to Amache. I can imagine what my parents thought when they got there, because they got to go to an apartment 4C for block 11G. Well, that was a big thing for them because at least they had a room, whereas previously in the Santa Anita Racetrack Assembly Center, they had occupied a former horse stall. So in their minds, I'm sure, strangely, this was better. In 2016, I attended my first and only pilgrimage. Touring the Amache site and the town of Grenada was particularly moving, especially since I was able to share this experience with my cousin, Richard Kawano, and his wife, Misa. Richard, being 8 years older than I, could tell us a lot about what was going on or what had gone on in the camp. First of all, we toured the site. He pointed out the different places in the site, like the post office and the co-op, the cemetery, of course. And then we went out to the town of Grenada, and then he pointed out the stores that were there, because occasionally the campers, if you want to call them that, the incarcerees, were able to leave the site and actually go shopping. I remember the fish market particularly. Then we went on to the Arkansas River, and this is what was so funny. He said, this is where Auntie Flo and we caught fish barehanded and we took them back to our barracks. Who knew that? I didn't know that he did that. Richard's memories are as vivid as some of mine. I have 3 in particular that I do remember very carefully and vividly. The first one is very emotional, because I remember my dad lifting me up onto his shoulders, covering my face with a scarf so that I don't get blinded by the sand that would blow in our faces as we stood in line for the mess hall to have our meals. The second one that I remember vividly is my being a preschool child, having my orange juice, lying down on my blanket, and having a nap. The third one is actually very compelling, because I can remember standing on a platform on a Japanese bathtub called an ofuro, looking up at the stars and washing down before I got into the tub with my mother and her two sisters. Although I've only attended one pilgrimage in 2016, I have been volunteering at the University of Denver's Archaeological Field Schools every 2 years since 2010. As we uncover artifacts, look at items in the museum, I've been able to reconstruct what my first years of life were like. If I were to write a book, I think the title would be Digging for My Roots. I think that would be so appropriate because this has been a personal journey into my own history as an incarceree. My interactions with the site of Amache and the town of Grenada, both as a volunteer archaeologist and during the pilgrimage, have been uplifting and transformative, for they have been physically unearthing the memories I've had as being incarcerated at Amache as a child.
Thank you for your words and for sharing, Carlene. My name is Ricky Ejima, and I am an Amache descendant. I first had the pleasure of meeting Carlene during the 2014 University of Denver, or DU, field school, where I was a high school intern. Together, Carlene and I worked on an interactive exhibit at the Amache Museum in Grenada for people of all generations to share their connections to Amache. In working closely with Carlene and other Amache descendants, I felt connected to my past and empowered to stand up against all forms of injustice. In working with local Grenada townspeople and DU field school students and staff, I understood the necessity of sharing this history through the power of community anthropology and storytelling. I am a Yonsei, or fourth generation Japanese American, and descendant of World War II incarcerees. My maternal grandfather and his family were incarcerated at Amache during the war. Visiting Amache allowed me to better understand my Japanese American identity and ancestry. Although I grew up with grandparents who were willing to share their experiences of life in camp, I gained a much greater perspective of their reality when I had the opportunity to stand in my grandfather's barracks with the hot summer high plains winds scraping against my skin. I could imagine my grandpa playing catch and fearing for his life when he and his buddies were caught by a guard retrieving a ball that had gone over the barbed wire fence. History came to life. Now that many World War II incarceration survivors have passed on, it is vital to keep this history alive. The various pilgrimages to incarceration sites, such as this weekend's Amache virtual pilgrimage, are a direct means to this. We can never forget the unjust and unconstitutional treatment of Japanese and Japanese American people during World War II, and we are obligated to stand in solidarity and in action with all who are oppressed.
Ricky, those comments, your sentiments and views are so appropriate and timely now, particularly about recent anti-Asian behavior that's been occurring in the United States. It is our responsibility, as well as others, to constantly remind that all of us, regardless of our ancestry, ought to be protected against unjust and unconstitutional treatment. The anti-Asian hate crimes bill recently passed underscores this position.
So we hope that over the next 3 days, you will, as a virtual pilgrim, discover and enjoy memories you maybe didn't remember even having. And if you are not an Amache survivor, we hope you will engage this history in new and compelling ways.